Hi, friends. It's been a minute. A lot has happened in the roughly month or 3 weeks since I've been able to get a video up to you. Hello. Did not expect that to happen, but we got a really bad strain of influenza. I'm still recovering. We're pretty sure that I have pneumonia because my recovery has been so slow and I haven't been to see my doctor yet, but I'm going in on my second week of barely functioning, but I am day by day starting to feel a little bit better, which is great because no farmer ever has time to afford to be sick, especially a crop farmer that has things that need to get planted at very specific times. So it's been frustrating and stressful to say the least, and that within a climate of geopolitics that has been a little crazy. So this Canadian up here, as with all of my fellow countrymen, have been experiencing quite the roller coaster of emotions for the past several weeks. Lots going on. But the wonderful thing is that working with animals and with growing plants is so very grounding, and it is so very lovely to be able to just turn all that off and zone out a little bit and focus on just the day-to-day, really basic but really beautiful stuff that is gardening and the farm life. So I'm really grateful for this life, and I hope this is finding you well wherever you are in the world and whatever your situation is with everything going on. My heart goes out to you. So this one is just a really quick one. I'm behind on doing this, but I've had questions as to how I prick out my little plants. So a few weeks ago, I shared on my Instagram, and I think I might have shared it here on YouTube as well, how I start a lot of my plants in little trays where I can just sort of broadcast sow the seeds and get them on my heat mat, saving myself a lot of time, a lot of energy, and helping me stay on schedule and saving me space on my heat mats. So what happens then is those plants germinate in those little trays and they start to grow, and I need to pretty quickly move them over into their future growing space. So what I do is move them straight over into 72 cell trays. So I have a couple prepped here, and they'll stay there until they get transplanted into my field or my hoop houses. So let's go down and grab some of these little plants because I want to show you how I go about doing this. But I also thought it might be helpful for you to see a little bit of my seed starting setup and what have you. So let's go get some little baby plants. Seed starting indoors does not need to be fancy, and you can see that my space is definitely not fancy. We use a space in our laundry room which is unfinished. You can see the insulation showing. It will be finished eventually. We are working actually on renovating right now, so it's total and utter chaos in here, but I have still got to get my seeds going. So I'm actually standing awkwardly because I'm straddling like a whole bunch of paint cans. And yes, this is our life right now. So I have a couple of these heat mats, and right now I'm just using one of them, and I just have the heat mats on wire shelving. I highly recommend heat mats. They help me with getting my germination to be quicker and to be more uniform. And these are the little trays that I was talking about. So most of my seed starting these days starts in little trays like this. I put a skiff of soil in the bottom, maybe a couple of inches, maybe like a cup or two of soil that fits into the bottom. And then I will just sprinkle the seeds on. So you can see here are some stock seeds that are pretty much ready to be moved off the heat mat and under my main lights. You can see all of my trays that are on the heat mat have lids on them. These, by the way, are recycled Chinese food takeout containers. These are my favorite trays, and my family knows this now, so they will all save me these containers. So when I started growing flowers, I didn't know that I could do seeds this way. So what I used to do was fill up a full 72 cell trays of soil and sow my seeds directly into the trays and then line them up on the heat mat. Now, I don't know if you can tell from the video, but basically one of my heat mats fits 4 trays. So one of my heat mats fits enough space for 4 72 cell trays. That is all. So I used to juggle that, and it could be a bit of a challenge because for what I am doing, I'm not always wanting to start full 72 volumes of things. I often will only be starting smaller amounts. Maybe I only want 24 of something or 36 of something. And I learned pretty quickly that when I mixed seeds on my tray, so say I started a tray, but I only wanted 12 tomatoes, so then I would do 12 tomatoes, and then I might do some status, and then I might do something else. All of these different seed varieties naturally, obviously, have different germination periods and different needs. And so it just made it a lot harder to keep everything in tip-top shape when some things would be germinating and needing to get off the heat mat while other things that were still in the tray still hadn't germinated. So it made it a little bit awkward. So when I started going down to this system, it really helped me with that. It also helped me save time because it takes very, very little time at all for me to just look at my seed schedule, grab some trays, put a tiny bit of soil in, sprinkle some quick seeds in, and then just let them germinate. And the other thing that I really like about doing this is that I then also don't have times where I have a tray that's only partially germinated. So now I'm taking little living plants and putting them in my 72 cell trays to grow. And I just really like that now I'm not wasting spaces in the trays and I'm not having sort of partially filled trays. That just bothers me. So yeah, this has been a good little system. By the way, these are sweet peas that I am rooting in water. You can see here. Those ones have to get planted. Very cool. Those are just the tips that I've needed to pinch off of my sweet peas that I already started in January. And when I pinch the tips of certain varieties that are new to me, and I only had, say, a dozen seeds that I got in the seed packet, I have saved the tips to create instantly more plants this year. What soil do I use? I always have used Pro Mix. This is Pro Mix. It's a really great Canadian product, and I like the one with mycorrhiza, which is a living fungi that really helps to promote root growth on the plants. I find it to work very well, and I use it for all of my starts, whether they're going in flats or plugs. So what I like to do, this bag is about 1/3 of it I think I've used, so it's about 2/3 full, which is plenty for me. This will take me through probably the whole growing seed starting season. So what I like to do is take a bucket, a tub of some sort, and get smaller amounts of this soil in here. Now it's really dry at this point, and it can't be used that way. I have to wet it. So that's why I like putting it in a tub. And I learned really quickly my first time starting seeds that you can't water the trays after you put the soil in, because all the little white bits float to the top. Doesn't work very well. So it's really much better to get that soil nice and damp before you start. So I'm just looking for wet, damp, but not too saturated. So this is too saturated here. You can see if I squeeze it, it's dripping out water. So I've got too much water. Really just want it to be nice and damp. I'll put a bit more in there, stir that in again. That's pretty good. So then once things are germinated, and I want to get them off of the heat so that they don't get all leggy and wonky, they go onto this rack. So this is a baker's rack, like a full metal baker's rack with shelves that actually slide out. And we've just rigged it up to be a seed starting station. I have 2 LED grow lights on each shelf, and I have them zip tied right up onto the shelf. So that means I use usually an extra tray inverted, as you can see here, to get my height up if I need to have things higher up so that they're not too far away from the lights. And this works really well. So you can see I've got full trays growing in here, as well as brand new little baby trays that are gonna need to get pricked out and put into 72s and then returned back to the shelf. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. We're gonna grab one of these little trays and I'm gonna show you how I get these little plants out of these and into the 72s. So all I really need, besides my cell trays, which are filled up, my little plants, the only other tool I need is something to sort of help me leverage my little seedlings out of my tray. So I like to use a pencil. I happen to grab this pencil because my kids double sharpen it, so no one will use it now. Anyways, I use that for leveraging. I also like to use that to poke holes into my plugs so that I can place my little plants down in there. So I'm gonna zoom you in so you can see what I'm doing. I just like to work left to right down my tray. Love to put a podcast on while I do this. So you can see I already started digging here just to see. So these are past where I would like to be doing this. I'd actually like to get these guys when they're even littler. But what I do is I get my pencil in and I pull up. If I have to, I'll pull the whole clump up and just start loosening out my little plant. So you can see there's the little root system. And you can see there it's multi-branching already. So I would prefer to be doing this before that happens. I'd prefer to do this when there's just one simple straight root there. It just makes it easier. It makes it faster to plant. So there's one little guy. When I'm doing this, I'm holding on to the leaves, not the roots, not the stem, the leaves of the little plants. By the way, these are Chantilly snapdragons. So these are 3 weeks on now, and I would have preferred 2 weeks is about right for these guys to get the right timing to move them over. I don't want them too small. You probably know Chantilly's can be really little seedlings, so I don't want them too small, but I want to get them before the roots are this developed. But c'est la vie, we have been sick, so we will just deal with it. So now I'm just making some largish holes in my plug trays with my pencil with a circular motion. Now they don't, of course, always need to be this large, but I have somewhat extensive little root systems going on already. I'm just gonna grab my little plant and just push those roots, and I'm not too worried, like I want them down in the bottom, but it's more about just planting that little guy somewhat deep and snugly. And the next one. First 3 little plants in. You can see I've just broken off a whole clump this time, just so that I don't do unnecessary damage. Sometimes easier than to gently pry that clump apart. right, so I'm partly through this tray and I just found a little younger snap that's more like I want to be planting. I don't know if you can see just one little root on this one. That's more of the stage that I'd prefer. So this is really early though. Even the ones that I'm putting in, most of them don't even have really a first true set of leaves yet. They just have a pair of leaves, most of them. I know these guys will be fine. It's just in terms of getting this job done quickly, I just find it a lot faster when they don't have such a large root system to contend with. This means I have to be more careful. All right, I popped down for a couple more trays. My status are up next. Again, they are further along than I would like to be doing them at this point, but that is how it goes. But it's not the end of the world. I can make it work. And I'm sure you're wondering, well, can you do this with all types of seeds? Does it work for everything? And I imagine it would. I do this for most of my seeds, but I don't do this for all of my seeds if it doesn't always make sense. For example, with very large seeds, like my sweet peas, I'll start them in a container with a wet paper towel rather than soil, because all I'm trying to do with those is just make sure that I see that initial germination, see that seed open and that little bit of growth. And then I want to plant them an inch deep in some soil and let them come up naturally. But I have found this works even for little seedlings that are not supposed to appreciate being transplanted, like poppies. At a very, very young stage, when you're dealing with them, when they're this young, it seems not to matter so much. So it's a great way, I find, for starting off the seed season. So I hope that was helpful and maybe gave you some ideas. And I'm sure there's other ways to do this as well. There are many, many ways to start seeds and grow flowers. And the great thing is we can all find the systems that'll work the best for us. So I'm going to carry on now and get all of my status set up in trays and get them back under the lights. The one final thing that I'm going to be doing with my finished trays is that I'm going to be giving them a good long soak in some water just to help my little transplants recover. So a nice long soak from the bottom where I fill a tray with water and soak the tray in it so that the moisture can be absorbed from underneath. And that is how I will carry on watering that tray as the plants grow bigger. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.